Welcome back to Hardball, and this is the segment where we tell you you can't make this stuff up. We're going to recap this Joe Wilson episode. Here's what happened last night in the United States House of Representatives.
There are also those who claim that our reform efforts would ensure illegal immigrants. This, too, is false. The reforms I'm proposing would not apply to those who are here illegally. It's not true.
Now, here's Congressman Wilson this morning outside his office on Capitol Hill.
Last night heard from the leadership that they wanted me to contact the White House and state that my statements were inappropriate. I did. I'm very grateful that the White House, in talking with them, they indicated that they appreciated the call and that we needed to have a civil discussion about the health care issues, and I certainly agree with that.
Poor guy is almost crying there. And here's President Obama today reacting to that apology.
I'm a big believer that we all make mistakes. He apologized quickly and without equivocation, and I'm appreciative of that. I do think that, as I said last night, we have to get to the point where we can have a conversation about big, important issues that matter to the American people without vitriol, without name-calling, without the assumption of the worst in other people's motives.
Cynthia Hardy is a radio host in Columbia, South Carolina. That's Joe Wilson's district. An old friend, Ron Reagan, is the host of the Ron Reagan Show on Air America Radio. Cynthia, first-time caller here. What have you been hearing today from his constituents, your listeners?
Well, it's very interesting. You know, I heard you say as you were looking at his rebuttal or his comments this morning, and you said, poor guy, seems like he's almost crying. Well, he's in a lot of trouble. Joe Wilson embarrassed himself and embarrassed his entire constituent base, everyone who voted for him. And many people feel as if he didn't just lose himself, he actually was himself. And let me tell you what I mean. In South Carolina, Congressman Wilson has enjoyed the invitation of a number of African-American leaders, particularly in the faith-based community. And many of them today are wondering, who is Joe Wilson, as if he's somehow now been unmasked. And so for his future politically, it will seem to be problematic here on out. And I fear that we're headed toward a very racially polarizing climate in this country, and Joe Wilson's comments serve to further define that divide.
Before we get to Ron Reagan, what do you mean unmasked?
You know, we, as I mentioned to you, a number of African-American leaders have felt very comfortable inviting Congressman Wilson to their church congregations to speak to groups. He was very palatable to them. When I mentioned racial polarization in this country and the fact that we appear to be moving in that direction, keep in mind the climate that we have just come out of. The climate of, I want my country back, from these health care forums. And these were not people of color. People who said, I don't want the president indoctrinating my children, when heretofore Ronald Reagan and Jimmy Carter and George Herbert Walker Bush, George W., Bill Clinton, and now Barack Obama, well, they all have something in common, but then there's something very different too. And what is that difference? So it doesn't appear to be about policy. It appears to be about race. And so where there was a comfort level with Congressman Wilson in the past among the African-American community, there appears to be a tear in that comfort level.
Ron Reagan, out there in Seattle, Washington, you've sat through and heard more than your fair share of State of the Union speeches, and your dad, the President of the United States, addressing joint sessions of Congress. Were you stunned last night when you heard that?
Yeah, I was a little surprised. You know, Mike, you two have sat through a number of these sorts of speeches before. In my life, I have never seen anybody vault over the bounds of decorum the way Joe Wilson did. Now, Cynthia is right that Joe Wilson may have unmasked himself, but I think he also unmasked the Republican Party to a large extent. A great number of Republicans, I think, are really in the Joe Wilson camp, if you will. They may be urging him to apologize now, but they're not really they're not really refuting what he said. And what he said, of course, was a lie in and of itself. Barack Obama is not proposing that illegal immigrants be covered. There's no legislation that proposes that. H.R. 3200 coming out of the House specifically mentions that illegal immigrants can't be covered here. And Joe Wilson ought to know that, and maybe he does. So he's either ignorant or he himself is a liar. But as I said, it is emblematic of a large chunk of the Republican Party right now, and that is not doing them any good.
So
now that the public
let me ask
that.
both of you, and let's stick with Ron. You answer this, and then Cynthia, you pick up on it. And the question is, we've had the birthers for the past 4 or 5 months, people who don't believe Barack Obama was born in the United States. We had what I've regarded as a truly depressing several-day period where people were protesting a president of the United States speaking to school children. And in my mind, it had less to do with ideology than it was just depressing to see this occurring in this country. And now we have this intemperate behavior last night in the House of Representatives. We have the increased polarization in politics. Ron Reagan, what do you figure is going on here?
Well, you have to wonder, is this disrespect for the office, or is this disrespect specifically for this man? And I tend to think, and maybe Cynthia is better positioned to comment on this than I am, but I do think that there's an element of race here. I do think that Joe Wilson may have held his tongue if a white president was up there behind that podium. I think it's almost creepy, if I can use the word, the lack of respect that the Republicans show to this man who is, after all of our president. He's our president, and he deserves a certain amount of respect just based on that. And the fact that he is not getting it, and so obviously not getting it from Republicans, I think is very disturbing.
Cynthia, go ahead.
In addition to that, I think that is very disturbing, too, that he's not getting it from many members of the Republican Party. But when you take into account as well that a number of people in certain segments of the population pick up on that behavior, and then they take it to the next level. So what you get is this blatant disregard for the office of the presidency, which is extremely un-American. And so where is the outcry for that? Now, I've seen and heard a number of people decry it today, but I think that that depressing period that Ron mentioned, when people were fearful about indoctrination and what the President of the United States would say to school children, I mean, we need to stop at this point, and regardless of anybody's political ideology, recognize the dangerous position that we are in terms of racial polarization and what that can mean for further to accomplish anything else in this country. And so, do you throw the baby out with the bathwater? I mean, or do you realize where you are and what your responsibility levels are? People elect individuals not just to protect a certain political slant, but to do the right thing for the American people. And I think somehow that's getting lost. The audacity of any member of that body to disrupt it in that way, for Christ's sakes, it made us appear a third world country. This is the United States of America.
Well, Great Britain, they do it every week. But Ron Reagan, let me ask you, did you ever hear your dad express any resentment or any feeling at all about the reception, the hissing that would sometimes occur when he spoke before joint sessions of Congress?
No, I mean, you know, we're used to a certain amount of shenanigans that go on in these sorts of addresses. The competing standing ovations, the sort of sarcastic applause and things like that. The guffawing and shuffling of feet and all that sort of thing. You put up with a little bit of that stuff. That's to be expected. But this went way beyond that, and it is just one element in a lot of disturbing behavior. And you've cited some of it at the town hall meetings and this business about President Obama speaking to school children, and that suddenly being indoctrination. This is going off the rails, and I think that we who work in the media, it's incumbent upon us to point that out to people, that this isn't just a political disagreement. This isn't just business as usual in Washington and the usual back and forth. Something very wrong and disturbing has been happening out there in the country, and we need to try and put our finger on it.
Ron Reagan, thanks very much. Cynthia Hardy, thank you very much. Up next, never mind the shouts of "you lie" last night. Why was it so important for Republican Whip Eric Cantor to be in his BlackBerry during the president's speech? That's next in the Sideshow. You're watching Hardball only on MSNBC.